Ladies and gentlemen, our RLCS season is back, and we have the major one coming up at the end of March. We have no idea where it is, or we know the exact dates, but we'll see. Either way, we know the new format. We got 4 teams from both North America and Europe, 2 teams from MENA, SAM, and OCE, and then 1 team from APAC and SSA each. Still a 16-team major, and so we're just going to go through before the split starts, and I'm going to predict who I think is going to make the major from each region. Starting off with North America, they get 4 teams to represent them on the international stage. The first team, no question about it, is Gen G Mobile One Racing. They have Apparently Jack, they have Chronic, and then during the offseason, they kicked Nolly for First Killer. Everyone knows that I rate Nolly really highly, but First Killer is an entirely different level of player. He's probably the best player in the region. The MVP race last season was in between him and Apparently Jack, so you've got both of them on the same team now. There's no question for who the 1 seed is. The 2 seed is G2. There's been a lot of talk about G2 being up there with Gen G, but there's also a lot of talk about them potentially like floundering out and missing, similar to how V1 did in the spring split of last year. That being said, I think it'd be kind of crazy to predict G2 not making this major, and so I'm just going to put them as a 2 seed. 3 seed, Space Station. Everyone knows how I feel about this team. They do have a very solid squad in LJ Hoxer and Chicago. I think the move replacing Arsenal for Chicago was a little bit of a side grade, but due to the circumstances of the offseason, it made sense that they went about it. I think LJ is still one of the top players in the region, and I think Hoxer is criminally underrated and a lot better than people give him credit for. And so while I'm hesitant to put these guys here just because I don't want to get let down and then get made fun of, I do have Space Station as my 3 seed. This is my 4 seed, Shopify Rebellion. This one I was not sure about. There's a lot of teams that could go in this spot, but the trio of 2-piece, Parth, and Justin kind of took it for me. Adding Justin to this team of young up-and-comers is going to be really good for, honestly, all 3 of them. And then Memory has played with both 2-piece and Parth before, and he has now moved into that coaching role. And so it'll be interesting to see how he's able to affect, his former teammates. He knows their play styles. He knows, their tendencies. And I think having him transition into the coaching role is actually going to help them out a lot. So the snubs from North America, I'm going through these all at once. There's 9 teams on here, and I know there's only 4 teams that make the major, and so I'm just listing every team that could possibly be chosen for a major spot. A lot of people are high on Luminosity. They've replaced AJ with Cheese. It's the old Optic Core, Reddles, and Magic Bear. They've got a good shout, and I know Reddles is taking 2 players that he thinks really highly of and helping train them to get better, and so there's definitely a shot. Dignitas really leveled up this offseason. They had Evo, who stuck around from last season, and then they added Arsenal and Gyro, so a little bit of an old Peeps reunion for those who have been around for a while. NRG has been really confusing this offseason. They added Mist, they kept Garrett, and then they added Frosty for a bit, but then they ended up kicking him at the last second and added Toasty, so I'm not really sure. NRG is the least confident one I am on here, to be honest with you. M80 is doing a weird thing where they're bringing 2 players over from Europe. They have AJ, Jorios, and Nas. So that'll be one to keep your eye out for them with a really high skill potential, but no one really knows if they're going to be able to prove that. And then Optic, that's not Optic Gaming, that's just OG. I'm going to get that confused more than once this season, but that is a veteran roster of JNaps, Calm, and Nolly. Really like what they put together there. And so they were honestly on the edge. I probably would have had them as my 5th. Moving over to Europe, we've got 4 teams here, and these were a little bit easier to pick. The first one, not the defending world champions, but Carmine Core. Carmine Core has been really good this offseason. They had an absolute masterclass set up by Vatira, of course. He was able to pull the players of Rise and Atal from their teams. Rise was a free agent. Atal was a little bit less so, but he was able to pull those 3 together, and then they also are now coached by Farah. So I think, while they're not defending world champions, this is definitely a clear favorite heading into the season. The second seed is the defending world champions, though, Team Vitality. A lot of people, or I don't know if a lot of people are remembering this, but BDS really faltered last year after missing out, or after winning Worlds. They missed out on the fall and winter majors, and so there might be a little bit of cost concern for Vitality, but I really don't think that's going to happen. I mean, Vitality literally have not lost an RLCS event yet. They did stumble a little bit more in the offseason as new teams got put together, as they kind of slowed down from their insane run of literally not losing, but I do still have them as the 2 seed. 3rd seed, I have Gentlemates. This is a roster of Itachi, Seiko, and Juicy. It's putting together 3 French players who have a lot of potential, have shown to be good, and I think they're definitely going to be good enough for a top 3 in the region. A lot of Europe is kind of unproven rosters or a little bit shaky, and I just think these guys have all shown that they have what it takes to be at the top. Sure, they might not be the stars on their teams, but I think they're going to be good enough to make it in as the 3 seed. 4th seed, as I was talking about, a little bit more rebuilding here from BDS. They picked up Exotic and Drawley to team up with Monkey Moon. Obviously, we know how good Monkey Moon is. Exotic had a very solid year on Carmine Core as well. Drawley is definitely the unproven quantity of this team, but there's a lot of hype heading his way during this offseason, and so I do have them squeezing in at 4. European snubs, I only have 2 teams on here. I think there's a good chance that the depth, this is where I'm going to get flamed. I think there's a good chance that the depth in North America is slightly more than in Europe, but I would also choose Moist and Oxygen to beat NA5 and NA6 most of the time. I mean, Oxygen literally hosted an offseason tournament in North America, flew their team over here, and had them beat 15 top North American teams. They didn't beat all of them, but like they won the tournament. They beat G2, and I have them missing out on an EU major spot. So if that tells you exactly where I'm holding North America in standards right now, like, it's bad. Anyways, Moist, Oxygen are my EU snubs. Moist picked up Oli and Rezi, and to go with Joyo. Obviously, Joyo is a very franchise player for Moist. I'm not sure he's ever leaving that organization permanently. So that's definitely an unproven roster, and they have a lot of potential. They actually beat Oxygen in the only only LAN competition during the offseason. Oxygen is Oski, Ixo, and Archie, who did win A3's tournament in North America. So it sucks that I don't even think they're a top 4 team in Europe, and they did that. Moving on to OCE, we have 2 teams coming out of that region. The first one I'm going to go with is Power. Power is the roster of Banana, Torsauce, and Fever. They ended up replacing Amphis during the offseason, and honestly, this move confused me, but so did the entirety of OCE's talent consolidation. So I still think they are number 1, despite what seems to be on paper a little bit of a downgrade. Second one I have is Chiefs, and this is a organization that's coming back to Rocket League. Last time they made LAN, they made top 4 season 6. They were around for most of season 8, 9, I think is where they kind of dropped out. And now they're back. They picked up Super Locky, Hunter, and Gus. Gus has never made a LAN before, and I got him making his first one this year. I have a lot of respect for Super Locky. He made every single regional final in last year, and honestly, I think he could pretty much do the same thing this year if he keeps up with the way he's going. Hunter, criminally underrated as well. He has a lot of mechanics, and if he can really actually participate in every single event in the split, I think he'd do a lot better. Unfortunate situation in spring last year, but I do have this roster second. The OCE snubs I have is literally just Pioneers. This is Amphis, Scrub, and Fiber. OCE talent consolidation makes absolutely no sense to me. Honestly, I would have taken last year's Power and last year's KCP over maybe even both of these rosters. And I mean, Ground Zero was really good at the end too. So OCE, I don't know what you're doing. I really don't. And maybe that's on me, but it's confusing. South America. South America is probably the most fun region and definitely the most cutthroat of the year. First team I got coming out of South America is Furia. This is Trufino, Lost, and Jan. They replaced Card with Trufino during the offseason and then beat everyone in South America. They played in North America last year, and it did not go very well for them. They made 1 LAN and ended up getting last of that LAN, not qualifying for Worlds. It was a disappointing season, but now that they're back in South America, I think they're going to have a lot more success, and they're definitely, in my opinion, the favorites. Second team I have on here is Crew, and I know what you're probably thinking, and I'll get to them in just a second. But Crew, I have a lot of respect for. That's Card, AJG, and Bems. AJG was looking like one of the best players on Complexity towards the end of the season. That's probably not really a popular opinion. I think he was very solid. I think Complexity definitely downgraded in their move for who they picked up in place of him. But I got a lot of respect for AJG. I think he's very solid. Bems is definitely an online player. He has that reputation, and I think he's a lot better than people give him credit for. But if you're talking about qualifying for LAN where it is online, I think Bems is at a little bit of an advantage because he is able to play where he's more comfortable. And then Card, King of South America. I mean, I really like this super team lineup, and I know a lot of super teams don't normally work out, but this is one that maybe I'm a little bit biased towards and have a lot of hope that they could do really well. So we get to the South America snubs. No, I did not forget about them. Complexity is obviously the first notable missing name. They were playing in North America last year. They had the roster of AJG, Racebull, and CRR. Their offseason was interesting because it was rumored very early that they were picking up Dorito, and then we heard nothing from them. And then all of a sudden they sign up for South America. Apparently there were visa issues with getting Dorito into, the US, and it would be weird having him play from Canada and essentially doing what CRR did in his first split. If you remember, Complexity in the fall was not great. CRR was playing from Canada, and it wasn't a great team environment. And then once he was able to play in a more comfortable living situation, they immediately became a lot better. So they didn't want to do the same thing with Dorito, so they ended up getting to play in South America, which is certainly interesting because that means we now have 2 European imports to South America. Not something I really would have had on my bingo card at the start of the year. But honestly, we've seen this duo of CRR and Dorito so many times. And I know they made LAN finals with Guild and Gamers 8. That was a different format. For some reason, I don't see it going that well for them. I don't. I have a lot of respect for the players. I think Razable's really good. I think they're going to fall flat. I think it's going to be a little bit too cutthroat, and they're going to just barely miss out to Crew on this first major. That's the boldest prediction I have in here. I'm aware of that, and we'll see if it pans out, but that's where I got them. To go over the other competing rosters in South America, you got Team Seeker with Mata, Brad, and KB1. KB1's a very highly touted prospect from Team Seeker. He's been very solid for them. Mata gained a lot of respect from me at the Spring Major, where he had an insane shot on Complexity, actually, and he's definitely been an up-and-comer. I was not familiar with his game back last spring, and now I certainly am. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar enough as I have them missing this major, but I got a lot of respect for Mata, and then Brad was a very solid fill-in on Crew last year. Ninja Pajamas, they have Knight, Astro, and Swift. Honestly, might be an unpopular opinion. I really like the lineup of Astromix, Swift, and Mata, and I might have had them pushing for a major spot more so than I have them with Knight. They ended up doing a last-second trade with Team Secret, where it was trading Knight for Mata. But I still think this Ninja Pajamas roster is really good. And then W7M, maybe an unpopular pick, definitely more of an outside shot, but they've been on the come up for a while. You got Royales, Wisty, and Diaz. They lost Swift. I believe they had Swift at the beginning of this offseason, but they picked up Diaz. Both of them are very young, promising prospects out of South America, because for some reason South America has more young, promising prospects than North America does. But I got a lot of faith that they could definitely make a push and stay in that general top 6. I think the top 6 is where that cutoff is. There's also Hero Base, but I don't have as much faith in them doing the same kind of thing. But if there were to be a 7th team in South America, it's going to be them. Watch them make the major now that I don't even have them on the snubs list. Middle East, North Africa. This one is relatively easy in my head. They get 2 spots now, which is huge because there were definitely 2 teams good enough to be competing on an international stage. You could argue even 3 with how the last World Championship shaked out, but you can't really just add 3 if you're not giving many spots. First team I have is Falcons. No, this is not the Falcons of last year. Mina went wild in the offseason, and now the Falcons have the twins in Rawas and Kalirs. I guess it's Killers. I don't even know anymore, man. But they also have TRK still. So that's the Falcons roster. Definitely going to be weird and an adjustment period to get used to the fact that the twins are on Falcons now instead of the second team I have on here, obviously, in Rule 1. Rule 1 has the Falcons core of Ahmad and Khalid, and they also have Napo, who is the young prodigy who was banned all of last season and was tearing it up at the end of the 2022 season before he got banned. A lot of hype for him heading into it. I'm recording this after the MENA qualifiers double elimination phase is finished, and so both these teams have qualified for the main event of the first regional so far. Did it pretty solidly. I don't believe either of them dropped a game, so good on them. I'll be excited to see them really hit the pitch in the Swiss stage next week. The one team that I had missing is Twisted Minds. That's Senzo, SMW, and Mawson. Mawson really proved himself to be a lot better than I gave him credit for last year when we saw him on LAN, like getting that crucial bump into Game 6 against Moist to send Twisted Minds to Worlds, actually. But I think it's a tough top end of MENA, and Twisted Minds just barely misses out. I'm going to go through these two quickly, APAC and SSA. There's really only one team I know from either of these regions. APAC had a little bit more competition last year, but this year I only see it as Gaming Gladiators. You've got Realize and Virtuoso from Elevate's roster last year, and then you also have Maxiu, who stayed on Gladiators. I think this is a very clear favorite in APAC. Not as clear as a favorite as Elevate was last year, but I do have them pretty firmly in first. Second, well, not second, but in Sub-Saharan Africa, I still have Limitless. They're still sponsoring the roster. The core of Snowy and To Die For are still together, but they replaced Darth with Sweaty, and so I don't really know much about other SSA teams, but I think they're pretty solidly in first still. And yeah, that's it. Those are my spring major predictions. I'm not calling it Major 1, guys. I'm not. I said on the first slide, I don't know if you caught it, that I'm not calling it the Major 1. It is the spring major. It happens in March. It's more of a spring major than Boston in July is. So, spring major predictions, that's who I've got. Let me know what you disagree with, because I know you disagree with something. And I'll see you guys in March when you guys roast me.